The mountain thawed, and the princess appeared on its face, her head brushing the sky. It was Sunday, a month after the accident, and everyone had gathered in the living room. Dad had begun to expound a scripture when Tyler cleared his throat and said he was leaving. "I'm going to college," he said, his face rigid. A vein in his neck bulged as he forced the words out, appearing and disappearing every few seconds, a great, struggling snake. Everyone looked at Dad. His expression was folded, impassive. The silence was worse than shouting. Tyler would be the third of my brothers to leave home. My oldest brother, Tony, drove rigs, hauling gravel or scrap, trying to scrape together enough money to marry the girl down the road. Sean, the next oldest, had quarreled with Dad a few months before and taken off. I hadn't seen him since, though Mother got a hurried call every few weeks telling her he was fine, that he was welding or driving rigs. If Tyler left too, Dad wouldn't have a crew, and without a crew he couldn't build barns or hay sheds. He would have to fall back on scrapping. "What's college?" I said. "College is extra school for people too dumb to learn the first time around," Dad said. Tyler stared at the floor, his face tense. Then his shoulders dropped, his face relaxed, and he looked up. It seemed to me that he'd stepped out of himself. His eyes were soft, pleasant. I couldn't see him in there at all. He listened to Dad, who settled into a lecture. "There's two kinds of them college professors," Dad said. "Those who know they're lying, and those who think they're telling the truth." Dad grinned. "Don't know which is worse, come to think of it. A bona fide agent of the Illuminati who at least knows he's on the devil's payroll, or a high-minded professor who thinks his wisdom is greater than God's." He was still grinning. The situation wasn't serious. He just needed to talk some sense into his son. Mother said Dad was wasting his time, that nobody could talk Tyler out of anything once his mind was made up. "You may as well take a broom and start sweeping dirt off the mountain," she said. Then she stood, took a few moments to steady herself, and trudged downstairs. She had a migraine. She nearly always had a migraine. She was still spending her days in the basement, coming upstairs only after the sun had gone down, and even then she rarely stayed more than an hour before the combination of noise and exertion made her head throb. I watched her slow, careful progress down the steps, her back bent, both hands gripping the rail, as if she were blind and had to feel her way. She waited for both feet to plant solidly on one step before reaching for the next. The swelling in her face was nearly gone, and she almost looked like herself again, except for the rings, which had gradually faded from black to dark purple, and were now a mix of lilac and raisin. An hour later, Dad was no longer grinning. Tyler had not repeated his wish to go to college, but he had not promised to stay either. He was just sitting there, behind that vacant expression, riding it out. "A man can't make a living out of books and scraps of paper," Dad said. "You're going to be the head of a family. How can you support a wife and children with books?" Tyler tilted his head, showed he was listening, and said nothing. "A son of mine, standing in line to get brainwashed by socialists and Illuminati spies." "The school's run by the church," Tyler interrupted. "How bad can it be?" Dad's mouth flew open and a gust of air rushed out. "You don't think the Illuminati have infiltrated the church?" His voice was booming, every word reverberated with a powerful energy. "You don't think the first place they'd go is that school where they can raise up a whole generation of socialist Mormons? I raised you better than that." I will always remember my father in this moment, the potency of him and the desperation. He leans forward, jaw set, eyes narrow, searching his son's face for some sign of agreement, some crease of shared conviction. He doesn't find it. The story of how Tyler decided to leave the mountain is a strange one, full of gaps and twists. It begins with Tyler himself, with the bizarre fact of him. It happens sometimes in families. One child who doesn't fit, whose rhythm is off, whose meter is set to the wrong tune. In our family, that was Tyler. He was waltzing while the rest of us hopped a jig. He was deaf to the raucous music of our lives, and we were deaf to the serene polyphony of his. Tyler liked books. He liked quiet. He liked organizing and arranging and labeling. Once, Mother found a whole shelf of matchboxes in his closet, stacked by year. Tyler said they contained his pencil shavings from the past 5 years, which he had collected to make fire starters for our Head for the Hills bags. The rest of the house was pure confusion. Piles of unwashed laundry, oily and black from the junkyard, littered the bedroom floors. In the kitchen, murky jars of tincture lined every table and cabinet, and these were only cleared away to make space for even messier projects, perhaps to skin a deer carcass or strip cosmoline off a rifle. But in the heart of this chaos, Tyler had half a decade's pencil shavings, cataloged by year.